I think our next speaker, everybody is going to want to hear this story because it's one of the most phenomenal transplant stories that I have ever heard. And I've been doing this a long time, 31 years, Cher. Can you believe that? 31 years. It's
gone by in the blink of an eye.
I know. I'm like, and I don't know about you, but it's Monday, Friday. Like, time goes so fast anymore. I don't even know where those 31 years went. And I just wanted, before I introduce our next speaker, we actually recorded her because she's working and she's going to join us afterwards. And she's going to tell you a little bit about what she does, and she's truly phenomenal. But I wanted to just give everybody who may not know me, my name is Lori Hartwell, and I'm the president and founder of Renal Support Network. I created RSN in 1993 because I had experienced dialysis for 12 years, and 12 of those years were 12 to 24. I was told I wouldn't get another transplant after my second transplant didn't work. And I just went on and lived my life as a teenager and a young adult. And lo and behold, I stayed alive and I made it till technology allowed me to have a third transplant. That third transplant lasted 20 years. And I like to tell everybody this because when I left the hospital of my third transplant, my creatinine was 2.2. Now, for those of you who know what creatinine is, that's not a great creatinine when you get a transplant. So they told me the kidney would last a few years. I was 24 years old. I was also told not to have kids because of the fact that I'm so small that they felt like a pregnancy would injure the kidney. And this was 1990, so this is a lot of things have changed since then. So I listened to the doctors. Luckily I was young and thought, well, I'm indestructible. I'm going to do this. And that third kidney lasted 20 years. My creatinine stayed at 2.2 for 20 years. I don't know how that happened. And then after 20 years, it started to putter out because I don't like the word rejection. I really don't like it. I like to say because I feel like, oh my God, I'm rejecting. And it really was just kind of giving out. And so I got back on the list. I'm very grateful I got a living donor. I had to do dialysis for a year. And what made my case particularly challenging was I have negative type O blood and 100% antibodies. And Dr. Rafael Villicana is one of the doctors who worked with me to get a successful transplant, so that I had to be desensitized. And he's going to be speaking later. But I have had this transplant now for 13 years, and I just got my labs yesterday. And do you know what my creatinine is, Cher?
Yeah, it's always so much lower than mine. 0.9.
It was 0.7.
Oh my gosh.
I know, I almost fell over.
Wow.
And I mean 0.7.
Bravo.
And so my fourth kidney, my first two kidneys never worked. My third one lasted 20 years with a 2.2 creatinine. And my fourth one with 100% antibodies, and I'm sure I glow in the dark if you turn the lights out. My creatinine is 0.7 today. My labs would shame anybody. I would like literally want to have a lab contest now. So I just want to let everybody, don't give up hope. You know, you're not a statistic. We're all individuals. I have beat the odds over and over again, and you can too. And I think the key is being educated, learning from your peers, and advocating for yourself. Because I want to introduce Jessica Fries. Jessica Fries is going to tell her story, but she is one that has, I mean, it's amazing. You're going to hear it in the interview. I don't want to repeat it. But and we're hopeful that she's going to get off work a little early and be able to join us so you can answer questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to please enjoy Jessica Fries' story. And just to tell you a little bit about her, She was diagnosed with kidney failure at 11 months. So it's a long time ago. And she had some situations where her original diagnosis that caused her kidney failure prevented her from really keeping a kidney transplant. So we're going to move along through the story, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what it was like. So I know you were on dialysis, Jesse, and I'm so thrilled you're here today at 11 months old. Now, what
Yeah,
was the first time you remember having to do dialysis? Because you don't remember 11 months, do you?
I don't. And I was actually a year old when I first started dialysis. I was diagnosed at 11 months, but my kidneys were removed at a year old. So, really, honestly, I don't remember anything. Just it's been part of my life, you know. I think the latest I remember is probably like 5 or 6. So starting like in kindergarten. so
So, so
um
did you do PD or hemo?
I started out on PD and then ended up on hemo.
Okay. So, so you went to grade school, you went everything, you were probably on a restricted diet, right?
Yeah.
How was that? How was that with other kids? I mean, did you feel differently, or it was just, oh, well, another day at the office?
Well, I mean, it's hard being a kid, right? Being around kids your own age, you're not able to eat the same things they can. I also had a teacher's aide in school. So she would be the one taking care of me, making sure I got my meds, helping me from class to class. If I felt sick, she would make sure I'd get to the nurse. So, yes, the kids knew there was something different. And being restricted on your diet, you feel left out. You can't enjoy the same things they can. So it was more like feeling left out, and somehow they had to figure out some way to include me by involving something that I could have while the other kids were having something they could have.
Well, it's nice that they actually thought of that. So some people don't even think about it, like, oh, you can eat the cardboard, right?
Right, the cardboard.
The cardboard
No,
of the pizza box, right? The cardboard of
yeah,
the pizza box. So tell us a little bit. So you were on hemo. How old were you when you got your first kidney transplant?
I was 11 years old when I got my first transplant.
So you had been on dialysis 10 years, and was
But
it
that
a living donor or a deceased donor?
it was deceased. It was a deceased donor.
And what was that like? Do you remember getting called, and what did the doctors tell you?
Believe it or not, coincidentally, I didn't get a call. I was already in the hospital. I was at the children's hospital, just getting done with dialysis. And lo and behold, the nephrologist that apparently got this call was already in the hospital with his son. His son was sick with, if I remember correctly, his son was sick with the flu. And he got the call. He comes into the dialysis clinic and he says, "Hey, Jess, how would you like to get a kidney today?" So I was kind of already in the place that they wanted me to be in. And if I remember the story right, my dad was already there. He was there to pick me up and take me home. Well, we had to get my mom on the phone and say, "Hey, we're not coming home today."
So you got the transplant, and what happened after that?
So I got the transplant. Everything was fine. Of course, at the time they didn't know my disease very well, so they were kind of rolling the dice to see what would happen, and it was
What
working
is your
fine.
disease? What is your disease? Tell
I have
everybody.
Yeah, I have atypical HUS, which is atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome. And so they were kind of playing the game to see how is this going to work? Are we going to be successful or are we not going to be successful? And unfortunately, 9 days later, it failed. My disease decided to destroy it, unfortunately. Came back. Um, Again, didn't know too much about the disease at the time. They didn't know about any sort of medications. interaction wise. And then, unfortunately, 9 days later, it was done. The disease took it.
So you probably never left the hospital.
No, no, I never left the hospital. The nephrologist came in. He goes, "Hey, we can send you home with the kidney, have you come back and have it removed." And at the age of 11, I said, "That sounds kind of crazy. Why do you want to do that for? I'm already here. You might as well do what you need to do."
How did you
So,
feel? We look back and we see all the things we've overcome, but what did you feel at that moment? Did you feel anything? Because I know sometimes we're just numb because we have to deal with so much.
um, so you're asking how I felt about the kidney failing?
Yes,
Okay.
'cause
So, at that point, it was more like a disappointment, a letdown. Like, hey, I'm finally getting my freedom, and then all of a sudden, well, I only got 9 days worth of freedom from dialysis to now being told you got to go back to where you came from.
Right.
Um, it was a letdown. It was a disappointment. I even slipped into kind of like a depression, if that makes sense.
Well,
Like I didn't
I
want
think
to do
it's
anything.
interesting. I don't know if you relate to this, but as a kid, you just don't know any different and you just get used to it.
Right,
As opposed to when you're older and having something taken away, you never had it to begin with. So it
right.
was like a cherry on top to get the transplant, right?
Yeah, it was. It was. And so to have that taken away, it put me into a depression in some sense, mentally.
So what was the conversation after that? Were the doctors wanting to try again, or did they have to say, Jesse, we think we can't right now, technology isn't here, and you're going to have to just live on dialysis?
So unfortunately in my situation, they said that it was medically dangerous to try again. And so they unlisted me for 10 years after that. So I spent years on dialysis then.
And were you on hemo for the majority of that?
Yes, for the rest of the time I had been on hemo.
And I have to ask this question. What vascular access did you use? Did you have a good access during that time? Because of the fact that that is the hardest part about hemo is if you don't have the right vascular and you're really tiny. We wear the same size shoes, so I know how tiny you are.
Yeah, so prior to my transplant, yes, I did have a functioning access, and in fact, just recently that very access shut down on its own. Probably about a year ago, it finally decided I'm done working. We're not using it anymore. So, in a way, my interventional radiologist says, "Oh, this is a good thing in a way." I said, "Well, yeah, I guess you can say that. I don't need the access anymore. What are we using it for?" So I've had accesses in both legs. So I've had leg grafts the whole time
So
for
how
me.
many accesses have you had? Everybody deals with that when they've been on long term. Where have you had dialysis accesses put?
Okay, so believe it or not, I started out with permacatheters all up in here, and then two accesses in both of my legs, so left and right.
Um, that's brutal. So, so when did you learn that there was some new treatment available that was coming out that could possibly help you keep a kidney transplant? When did you hear that? What did you think?
So the first time we heard there was new treatments, new regimens, that would have been when I was first being seen at Johns Hopkins. So this would have been back in 2008, I want to say. Um, and then 2010 was when I was finally listed with them.
Okay. And then so you said, okay, so it's a new treatment that was coming out and what would happen is you would have to have treatment for the rest of your life, right? Is that
Correct. So
what they told you if you were to get a kidney with this new therapy?
Yeah, so at first they said, oh, you need a living donor in order for this treatment to work. And so they were searching through it's like searching through a needle in a haystack, right? So for me, it was such a complex situation. I had, first of all, I had high antibodies. My antibodies were at 100% at
Mhm.
that point. Plus, you tack on the rare condition I have. And then the thing they told me was that there was some sort of antibody that only a certain percentage of people have would cause me to reject a kidney instantly. So I was kind of in a tight spot there. I said, do we still want to do the living donor thing? Is there a way to do the deceased donor thing? Like they were kind of bouncing between ideas to the point of they talked to me about doing desensitization, doing plasmapheresis to lower my immune system and see if that would work, to try and find a living donor. And then finally, I believe it was the surgeon that spoke up. He says, we got to do something for this kid. Like, we got to do something for this girl. Like, she's been through the ringer. They even said, you have a leg graft that's usually the last ditch resort for people. I said, okay. um,
You just take it all in stride, right? Because they're like, well, yeah, this is kind of the final attempt to save your life, and yada yada, and you're just like, okay, I need to go to school. I need to go. You just live your life because you've been told that your whole life, right? You've been told your
yeah,
whole life that something's going on.
yeah. Well, they literally gave me a year to live if I didn't get this kidney.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right, well, we got a year to work with. What are my options? And they wanted to do the living donor thing. That didn't work out too well. They were searching, searching, searching. I even put the word out through social media. I had a friend who put on her vehicle, like we did a rolling billboard, if you will.
Hmm.
And we put my name, my blood type, my phone number, everything. I got a whole bunch of calls from that. Unfortunately, none of them even came close to being a match. So once that became unsuccessful, they said, let's try the deceased donor side. I said, okay.
So what was it like when you got the call? So walk me through the process.
Well, so at the time when I got the call, I was actually volunteering at my local animal shelter. I was working in the wildlife department at the time. And I got the call, but I missed it. For some reason, it didn't go through correctly. I don't know, but something told me, said, call this number back. You gotta call this number back. I said, because I recognized the area code. I said, this has got to be Maryland. This has got to be some something with Johns Hopkins. Something was telling me just call them back. So I called them back, and they told me, hey, this is so and so. I don't remember the lady's name, but she said she was from Johns Hopkins, and she goes, we may potentially have a kidney for you. I said, potentially, or you do? They're like, no, we do. And I said, okay, so give me the details, who is it from? I asked those questions, and they said it was from like a 30 something year old gentleman who sadly took a bunch of pills and killed himself, unfortunately. Um, but because also I had hepatitis C in the mix, they said that could be a risk too. And when I asked how old he was, they said, do you want to go for it? I said, yes, I want to go for it. This may be my last opportunity. I'm going to take it. I don't care the risk. They said, you're willing to take it. I said, yeah, oh yeah, I'm going to take it. So, so then I hang up the phone with them. I call my father. I said, hey, we got a problem. Not necessarily a problem, but he's like, what happened? Did you get in a car accident or something? I said, no, not necessarily that. I said, I just got a call from Hopkins. They have a kidney for me. And
Wow.
he's like, oh. I said, I gotta come home. So, well, I drive myself. So at the time, I did have a vehicle. I was like, I'm coming home. And once I get home, I had to call my mom, who was at work. I said, Mom, you might want to come home now. She goes, why? I said, I got the call. And she's like, you've got to be kidding me.
Oh, wow.
I
Now,
said,
how
I
old were
know.
you? How old were you now? Just to give a,
I'm 36,
so how old were you when you got the call?
29.
So 28 years
Yes,
on dialysis.
yes.
Wow. That's amazing. So, I mean, so you get the call, you get prepped, you go into surgery,
Yep.
and what happened when you came out? Did it work right away?
Yeah, it definitely worked right away for sure. I put out 750 cc's of urine, I think, if I remember correctly. They said 750 cc's of liquid gold, we like to call it, right?
Right?
So everything was working hunky dory. You know, at the hospital, the surgeon was amazed. First of all, this kidney was a perfect match.
Wow.
And he says he had to look at my lab work 3 times from what I was told. He goes, yeah, he had to look at it 3 times. I was like, what?
And and so what happened? Uh, what's really exciting is Alexion makes a new product that
Yep.
becomes available. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like getting their treatment and how often do you have to get it now? Because you had your kidney for a long time, and I want to know what your creatinine is today.
So first of all, before surgery even happened, what they did, the day that I got the call, they started this treatment called Solaris. And so what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to build like kind of a block against my HUS. It kind of, I like to call it the Great Wall of China. Builds the Great Wall of China around my kidney and protects it from the HUS, almost putting me in remission, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Um, so it's used as an anti-rejection medication. And so they started it the first day I got the call, the night before my surgery. And then during surgery and now currently after. So I go every 2 weeks for infusions.
And how long do the infusions? So you've been taking infusions every 2 weeks for how many years have you had this kidney?
7 years.
But who's counting, right?
No,
7 years.
who's counting?
Every 2 weeks you have to go in. And how long does the infusion take?
35 minutes.
35. And I know that we've talked about this before. What's the hardest part about the infusion?
The hardest part about the infusions is just finding a vein and getting that line in, unfortunately.
I know that feeling. Our veins have been beat up so much that, you what's the there's nothing to fear but fear itself or an unskilled IV nurse,
Right.
that's really what I used to say because that's sometimes the most painful process of any hospital stay is all the
Yeah.
needles. So what's your creatinine today?
So my baseline is 1.4. Um, the lowest I've been so far is 1.0.
1.0. Wow.
Mhm.
And so, I always like to ask this because I want to learn just a little bit about, because I know you love animals, but what was the first thing you wanted to eat and drink? Like, I mean,
Oh,
because we're so restricted. What did you go crazy on, Jesse?
oh God. The first thing I wanted to drink was actually chocolate milk. I remember every single day I wanted chocolate milk. And then the first thing I wanted to eat was bananas.
And so where are you at now? What's one of your favorite foods that was forbidden?
Oh God, there's a lot that I totally enjoy. For instance, over the weekend I had gone to a birthday party. And at a birthday party, kidney patients are like, oh, I can't have pizza, I can't have chicken wings, I can't have this. So that was a menagerie right there. I love pizza and wings. Pasta is my big weakness. I'm the biggest chocoholic you'll ever meet at this point because I couldn't have it before. So
So there's well, and it's interesting because you're so petite. You really, probably couldn't drink a lot of fluid, and you were really restricted on fluid and food because you're tiny. I think I'm a little bit taller than you.
I think we're about the same height, if I remember
Okay,
correctly.
yeah. I think we had this argument at a prom one time, right? Like
Yeah.
he was taller and we were both standing on our tippy toes or
Yeah.
something. But anyways, it's and so tell us a little bit about what your plans for the future are, because I know, and I want to hear a little bit about this, how you love animals. And I really connect with you on that because animals have been a source of comfort, pets for me growing up, because they understood when other people didn't. You could talk to them, they had the empathy for you, and it just, I don't know, you have a special connection when you connect with an animal when you have a serious illness. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing today, and what your plans for the future are.
Okay, well, I work full time as a veterinary technician, where I mainly am assigned to doing lab work. So I see
The
a lot of
irony,
those levels.
the irony, right? You're like, you feel for that little dog or little cat, right? With the
Yeah.
lab work.
In fact, I just had a coworker tell me, Josh, during these discharges, we have a kidney patient. You should just go in and talk to these clients. You know about that. I was like, don't get me started on that. So yeah, I mostly do lab work. So that's where I do all the blood work, the urinalysis, the things that would typically happen with a human being. I'm doing for dogs and cats. I'm ordering up the labs. I'm even to some extent, I will be asked to go and draw the blood if somebody needs help with it. I'm also doing nail trims. I help with X-rays. I send out X-rays. The whole 9 yards I'm doing.
Well, that's pretty exciting. And my apologies, but my parrot is in the background and he is just so excited over this. He's like banging the cage.
I can't hear him, so he's not
I
loud
know. I
enough.
mean, I don't know if you guys can hear him, but that's him whistling and banging the cage, or it's lunchtime. Um, well, and so, with work, because you're working full time, I mean, you live alone. I see that you cook all the time. You're very, very active. And um, you just coordinate your infusions every 2 weeks around work. So you just tell them like you got to take off Monday morning. How does that work for you?
So typically, I was giving them a copy of the infusion schedule. So I usually tell them, hey, it's every 2 weeks. Sometimes the manager does forget, and I've had to, say, hey, we got a problem here. You're scheduling me for 7:30 in the morning. I kind of need to go to infusion. So I would give her a copy of the infusion schedule and just tell her, hey, I need to be at infusion at 8 a.m. And so what they'll typically do is they'll schedule me for the later shift. So I'll go in at say 2 o'clock and I'll close until 8:30.
I see. So, and do you feel anything after the infusion? Do you feel okay?
Oh yeah, no, I feel fine. It's not. I tell people it's not like dialysis. Um, it's totally not like dialysis. It doesn't tire me out. It doesn't drain me like dialysis used to. It's more or less building me up. It builds my immune system up to fight the HUS. So it's nothing like dialysis was. So it's just an infusion and off I go.
What there's and how far do you have to drive for the infusion?
I want to say, so from where I live, it's probably about a 10-15 minute drive.
And I'm a Southern California girl. You live in Buffalo, New York,
Yep.
where I think it's one of the coldest places on on the map in the United States. What is it
Uh,
like to get up at 7:30 in a blizzard? But you have to go, right? You don't have
mhm.
any choice. And you're conditioned because you had to go for dialysis. You know the consequences if you don't.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, do you have foot warmers? What do you do? I'm like, oh my goodness, I just can't even imagine going out in the cold. I guess I'm a Southern California, I'm a desert rat at heart, I guess.
It's called layering. You put as many layers as you can on. You go out in the cold. If you gotta clean off your car, you clean off your car. You get up extra early just to do that. Um, so here in my complex, we had a situation where we had a major blizzard and we got stuck inside for a few days. And I was the one and only one that managed to get out the door and clean the walkway. So I used my mighty strength and my small size to get out the door. So
And so so you've been doing this for 2 weeks for almost 7 years now, right? Every 2 weeks,
it's
like clockwork.
it's every 2 weeks, minus a time where I was hospitalized for a very bad UTI, and I called the office, and they said, "Jess, you'll be fine. We'll just wait until you're discharged from the hospital." Okay. So
Jesse, we both are products of medical innovation. There are inventors who created this treatment. And,
mhm.
you know, I always love to thank them, but I wanted to know what would you say to them if they were sitting in the next room?
Oh gosh. Well, there's two different forms of this drug. There's actually a longer lasting form also, which I'm not on currently. They don't want to rock the boat with what I'm already on that's already working, so they're keeping me on the one I'm on. But if I could literally talk to those who made it possible, I would completely give them all my appreciation for it because I'd be tell them I was on dialysis 28 and a half years without your medication. I wouldn't be 7 years a recipient today. Your drug saved whatever, however it works, it's working. It's allowing me to stay off of dialysis, and it has allowed me to work full time and do what I love to do, have a life out of dialysis and off of the machine finally.
And, to wrap up, your family was there with you for 27 years plus your transplant time. So, what do you want to say to your family? Because it's tough. I know that.
Well, I mean, my family has been amazing. There's nothing but great gratefulness for them. There's nothing but appreciation for them. I mean, heck, I lived with my sister for 6 weeks post transplant. She lived an hour away from Johns Hopkins, the very hospital where I was transplanted. So I spent 6 weeks recovering at her house with a 4-year-old and her husband at the time. So, yeah, there's nothing but like utmost appreciation for them for their support and just being there. And, you know, before I was transplanted, my sister literally just closed on her house and got her house so that we would have some place to stay. It was my dad and I. He was my, care buddy is what they call it, where he was there to get me to and from the hospital for clinic appointments, blood draws, things like that while we were in Maryland because my sister works. She also has a daughter. So we weren't going to intrude on her. We just did our own thing. And really, my dad was like, well, some of this is not going to be on me. Jess knows what she's doing. She's going to take the rope and she's going to do what she's got to do. I'm just here supporting her. I'm just here to get her to where she needs to be because at the time I couldn't drive, right? So they didn't want me driving. So, and then on top of things, I had a nephrostomy tube. So because my bladder was so atrophied, I couldn't hold the urine that the kidney was making. They had to figure out a way. How are we going to do this? They talked about augmentation, and I said I would really like to pee on my own. I want to be able to do this on my own. So they ended up putting the nephrostomy in. And at some point, I talked to the surgeon. I said, hey, is there any possible way that I could train my bladder to work on its own by using the nephrostomy tube? He says, oh, yeah, yes, you can. I said, okay. So there's a little clamp on the nephrostomy tube that turns it on and off. So when you turn it off, it goes directly to the bladder. And so I started doing that slowly but surely. So at some point, I would turn it off, let the bladder build, and then release on my own, and then turn it back on to the bag. And the surgeon called me a genius for coming up with it. I said, it takes anatomy to know what's happening here. Like, what does your kidney normally do? It sends the urine to the bladder, goes through the ureter and into the bladder where it's stored. Well, the nephrostomy is just an outside source. Because my bladder was being, strengthened and trained, I just said, all I have to do is just turn it off. And when I feel I need a break, just turn it back on. And that went on.
It's, I went through a similar situation and it was awful because you couldn't go anywhere unless there was a bathroom right next to you. And I don't know about you, but peeing your pants is one of a fear, right? You don't want to pee your pants. But that's what it is. How long did it take you to train your bladder?
For me to train my bladder and to finally get the nephrostomy removed, it was an entire year. Wow. So they said we want your bladder volume to be at anywhere between 200 and 250 cc's, somewhere in there. And I got it to that point. I said, so can I get this removed? And they said, yeah, go ahead.
No. Well, you obviously are an incredible advocate for yourself. I mean, I think, it's no mistake that you've lived this long with kidney disease because you're educated, you learn about things, you ask questions, and you always ask, hey, is this possible? Hey, is that, and that's the key. That's what you got to do. And, I'm so proud of you. I've known you for many, many years. You've come to a prom and maybe you'll come to our next prom. I mean, we're going to open it up to all adults too that had kidney disease as a child, because we want to celebrate life, because people who have kidney disease as a child have a different experience than those that are diagnosed as an adult. And you're a testimony to just incredible resilience, advocacy, and good doctors. We need our good doctors and our new staff that help us. And most importantly, it sounds like you had doctors that listen to you. And that is so important.
Well, not always. They didn't always listen right on the spot either. It also took some help from my mom too. She taught me to speak up for myself from a younger age. She says, I can't always do this for you. You're gonna have to do this. And so she would include me in every doctor's appointment. They would address her, but she would tell them, address Jess too. She might have something to say too. So it wasn't just about my mom speaking for me. It was more or less giving me an opportunity to say, hey, I have concerns or I have questions about what you're about to do.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, I'm so excited. And I always say this, pee all you can pee. That's the goal in life, right? Once you've been off dialysis, it's just to keep on trucking. And I can't wait to celebrate your 25th anniversary of your kidney.
Well, I'm hoping that I have no doubt that will come to it, because I'm doing good so far. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I'm really excited that you're here today, and we're going to switch over to live. And so hopefully that we'll be able to answer any questions that people have. So I don't know if you got to see the whole interview.
I saw a majority of it.
Do you think you're phenomenal?
I feel I am. I think everybody else does. I think everybody else here in my workplace thinks so.
Well, and I think it's so amazing that, so many long-term people who have kidney disease choose healthcare because I think we just know it so well. And you just chose pet care. So I
Yeah.
wish you lived closer to me because me and my husband rescue a lot of animals and I could use your services. So I want to know, does anybody have any questions for Jesse? And that includes our next speaker, Pamela Winterberg, who's going to be joining us. She's here. But we have a few minutes. We have about 5 minutes. So I wanted to see if anybody had any questions for Jesse.
So, Jessica, now that, since your transplant, you have this new lease on life on what you can eat. Do you have trouble, like some of us, keeping the weight off?
What I usually tell people, I can't even gain anything.
Really?
I can't gain anything. Like I've tried everything and I can't gain anything.
Wow. So you're basically my idol because you're like a bottomless pit. You can eat whatever you want to eat.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm told I get it from my dad. I can eat everything and not gain anything. So it's either a curse or an advantage, I guess you can say.
That's crazy. I'm going to bring our next speaker on, but stay on, Jesse, because
Alrighty.
Dr. Winterberg is a pediatric nephrologist, and she's going to get into giving a little presentation. But I just want to hear what you think. I mean, I know that pediatric nephrologists are one of my favorite doctors. And because I grew up with Dr. Richard Fine, I mean, he was my doctor. He's like the grandfather of pediatric nephrology. And what does it mean to see Jesse? Like, I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I want to describe it.
Yeah, no, this was amazing. I'm so happy I was able to join and hear your story, Jesse. I think, as Lori was saying, my background is as a pediatric nephrologist, and we do everything we can to help the children that are living with kidney diseases live as normal of a childhood as they can, but we often don't see much of them after they turn 21. And so it's just so great to see you thriving as an adult, a productive adult. Yeah, this is great.
And you get to see my scrub top, my nice green scrub
yes,
top I love there.
It.
So
I love it.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I'm so excited, Jesse, and I'm glad you got your water bottle there because I
always do.
Probably, well, it probably was a huge transition to learn how to drink enough. I mean, you're told not to drink, and then you got to drink, right?
Yeah, it's always next to me, right next to the computer, always.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, Jesse, we'll let you get back to saving animals. I'm going to. We're so thrilled that you're here today, and you could share your story. And I bet you the pet moms and dads are very grateful that you care about and know how to get their blood, because I always worry when I send my puppy to the back and they got to have blood drawn. It's nice to know that somebody like you is there.
Oh, yes.
So thank you, Jesse.
You're welcome.
We'll see you soon. We'll see you at the next one, I hope.
Yes.
From 26.
Yep.
All right. Sounds good.